Welcome to another episode of the Neon Buzz, Virtual Edition. It's a new year, we're already halfway through the 2020s, and it's the start of another quarter one. So we thought, what better way to kick off your year than to discuss a 2024 year in review and ways you can adjust your orthodontic marketing plan for 2025 to fit the market forecast. To do that, we're joined today by orthodontic consultant and market expert Shannon Patterson of Bentson, Copple, Patterson Associates. So let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Neon Buzz, where we offer marketing advice for oral, aesthetic, and other elective healthcare professionals. Sit back and relax while we share our digital marketing secrets to help you grow your practice.
Welcome to the show, Shannon.
Thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. I know that, this has been a long time coming, months in planning. A snowstorm, the flu have all got us kind of a little sidetracked, but we're here today virtually, and I'm so glad you could make it.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here.
So I guess I just wanted to get started, and for our audience, if you don't mind, to share a little bit about your background and maybe your day-to-day.
Absolutely. So I've been here, I cannot believe it, 15 years. This was not my background traditionally. I had been in medicine, but Doug was my neighbor, and so I've been here a while. And we traditionally used to be evaluation and transition shop. So we really dealt with doctors at the beginning of their career and a lot of times at the end of their career. As the market has changed, we find ourselves being advisors during, not only practice transitions, but career transitions. So a lot of doctors, with 85% of young doctors coming out of residency and taking employment opportunities, we find ourselves spending a lot of time with them, helping them renegotiate contracts as they come up for renewal, or maybe looking for their next job opportunity, or we don't specialize in startups. We send those to consultants that do, but people will reach out and start talking about those things. So we've kind of evolved as there's been some shifts, but right now we really specialize in advising practice and career transitions for orthodontists.
Yeah, and in a lot of our conversations, what I especially value is your ability to kind of glean all of the market knowledge and synthesize it and share it with practices that are in need.
Absolutely. Yes, we have a lot of data and we try to put a story around it. So we certainly enjoy our industry partners that help provide that data to us. But being in a practice a week, we see a lot of trends and insights to understand that data a little bit more.
All right. Well, okay, let's get jumped right in. So let's talk about the 2024 in review. What were some market trends you noticed? What were some gaps, maybe anything that was noteworthy from 2024?
I think, 2024 was a little bit challenging. I think patient acquisition was probably the hardest thing for practices. I just don't think practices had as many new patients coming in the door. But I do think that conversions were a lot better. So, that was really interesting. The conversion rate had kind of slipped because of some of the years previously. But I think that the conversion rate got a little bit better. But I do think, new patient acquisition was one of the hardest things. I just don't think as many new patients came in. And I think overall practices were down some this year. I mean, anywhere from 5 to 7, 8%. Practices in big metropolitan areas seem to be a little bit more affected than practices in more rural communities where they don't have as many options to seek treatment. And I also think, adult patients were down. I know we're going to dive into that a little bit, but we saw that as well.
Exactly. And so what do you think were some of the factors that kind of affected that?
So I think adult patients, obviously the economy was the biggest impact, right? So, the media talked a ton about inflation's coming down, things are getting better. But I think all of us as consumers and business owners realized, that inflation might have come down, but prices really didn't. And consumers were just stretched thin. It was really hard for some families to tack on, an extra $200, $250 a month to seek treatment. I think a lot of, families still got treatment for their kids, but, adults might have taken a step back and thought they might wait a little while. I also think that adult patients, a lot of times you're not competing with other orthodontists for adult patients, but you're competing against other elective procedures for adult patients, right? And I do think, the GLP drug of weight loss really did play a factor in that. I have several friends that are on that, and it's really, an amazing thing. They've really been able to kind of get on the other side of that. But if people are spending, $800 to $1,000 a month on something like that, that's kind of eating up that discretionary income. And
Sure.
I think that drug, sometimes I don't think people realize how big that is, but I think they're projecting that in a few years, that will be 1% of our GDP in the future. So I think that drug
Ooh.
will become more and more common.
Wow. Well, that is just super interesting information to kind of keep in your pocket as you go forward. Thinking about marketing for these high-end services. I would never have thought initially that the GLP ones, like,
I didn't either. And, we really kind of kept watching graphs. And, by the end of the year, I was just amazed at how many more patients were on that. And, I also read an article the other day that it's really impacted people's spending on groceries. So, even grocery stores are feeling
wow.
this. So it has made an impact. And obviously, I think that, some of the junk foods maybe feel it a little bit more than some of the others. But, it's not just weight loss drugs, but, LASIK surgery or Botox, all kinds of things out there that, when adults are seeking elective procedures, there's a lot of different directions they can go. And I think that, something that is pretty beneficial about, orthodontic treatment is it lasts forever, right? You don't have to keep going
hmm
back and having an injection every 3 to 6 months. So I think, orthodontic practices could probably lean into that a little bit more, because your smile is an investment that lasts your lifetime.
That's so true. And I don't think that we often think enough about how many other procedures there are out there that we have to kind of market alongside, as opposed to just marking against your competitors. And so I think that's a really interesting point. And since we are on the subject of adult treatments, could you kind of speak a little bit more to that and how that looked in 2024?
Yes, adult patients exams were definitely down. We saw, just not as many adults seeking treatment. And I know, this might be a question you're going to ask, but we've talked a lot about, the declining birth rate. And so we know how important adult treatment is. And all of us kind of feeling that we had less adults to work with this year has been interesting. Some of the direct to consumer companies out there that were direct, marketing directly to the consumer are, talking a lot more about limited treatment options. I think that marketing has been huge for orthos. I think they've benefited from that. It's brought a lot of adult patients in the door, but it brought a very different patient demographic, right? So 70% of our adults are retreats. And so they've already had comprehensive treatment sometime in their lifetime. So they really are looking for a less expensive option to maybe just, do some retreats, some tweets, those social six. They're really not, looking, for that full comprehensive treatment. And so I think that practices that kind of leaned into that and provided more limited treatment options probably fared a little bit better than practices that didn't. Not everybody is comfortable treating that way. So we're not telling doctors to do that. But if limited treatment options are something that practices are comfortable with, I think there's probably better ways to market, to that specific demographic. I think that's something that orthos have not done super well in
Sure.
the past.
When you're considering like a first-time patient, even if it's a first-time adult patient versus a retreat patient, that's totally different messaging that you're working with, right? Like you have to think about what is their mindset, and like you were saying, they're looking for something that's maybe a little more affordable, something that maybe doesn't take quite as much time, something that's a little bit more aesthetically focused. And you really have to have all of this in mind as you're creating your marketing messaging, and being able to differentiate and pivot as needed.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, the key word for 2025 in healthcare is going to be personalization and customization. Adults don't like being treated like cookie cutters, right? And so, being able to, do an adult exam and really personalize that. If you have scanners, I mean, I think every adult patient should be scanned, and being able to do that case presentation can make a big difference. But I think adults are definitely, seeking personalized treatment options, and, practices need to think about that when they have adult patients come in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so then let's look at the other 50%, or maybe it's rather more than 50% of the orthodontic market, and talk about kids. How should we be looking at that how were we looking at that in 2024, and how should we look at that in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to that, declining birth rate, we know that there's going to be less adolescents to treat. And a lot of doctors, when I lecture, they kind of think, oh, I'm not really feeling that in my area. But the reality is, this is the year that we're really going to start feeling that decline. When you kind of fizzle down 2 to 3% a year, it takes a little bit of time to catch up. And some areas are feeling that a little bit more than others. There's some areas, there are a lot of states out there that have a higher death rate than birth rate, which is a little bit scary. And so I do think that understanding your potential patient demographics now and what that looks like in 5 years and 10 years is really important. But 70% traditionally of orthodontic patients have been under the age of 18. As we see less patients under the age of 18, that does mean that you'll probably have to lean into that adult treatment, option in your practice in the future. But I think, practices, not all practices out there are feeling that. There's a lot of pediatric groups out there that, are doing more phase one. We also see, pediatric practices out there that bring in in-house ortho. So, kind of making sure that you hone in on those relationships and that you're really connecting with your referrals, you're communicating with them during patient treatment, providing, sharing that patient journey with them is going to be really important, because we do see some pediatric groups, hiring more and more orthodontists.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing is the keyword of diversification, right? It's just that simple kind of rule of thumb that you always want to follow, and it applies here as well. You want to just be able to make sure that you're reaching across every group in your target audience, even those subgroups that you might have thought you want to, not focus on as much in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, phase one treatment has just really kind of taken off in the last few years. I mean, consumers don't want to wait for anything, right? So I want what I want, and I want it now. And so, we've seen that patient population, that demographic really grow. We see more phase one, or at least I do, than I have seen in previous years.
Kind of speaking of phase one and that age group, you've mentioned a term before that I really enjoyed, called observation frustration.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit more about this observation period and what we can be doing to improve that in 2025?
Yes, that's a great question. So, when we kind of see that we don't have as many young children coming into practices, so really that key age of 7, and if they're not going to be a phase one and they're going to be a comprehensive patient, obviously you're going to be monitoring them for a couple of years. But speaking as a mom, it can be really frustrating to have to go somewhere every 6 months or 12 months just to be told again, well, it's, Susie still needs to lose 2 more teeth. We'll see you back in 6 months. It can become frustrating. And I think in the past, observation patients were pretty safe. But I think in today's market, there are a lot more options in some areas. So, having a patient in observation doesn't mean automatically that they're going to continue to come back during that cadence, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So I think everyone thinks they have an amazing observation club or pool. But in reality, I think that, that really is a well that we need to be working and making sure that we are communicating with them, and even maybe using some virtual options so that mom doesn't have to take up her time, and being able to offer that to a consumer and a patient to say, Well, we are going to see you back in 9 months, but we can actually do a virtual touch just to make sure that, we can maybe save you time from coming in. I think that moms would really appreciate that. So we're certainly not asking anyone to do a virtual exam, but a virtual check-in could be really important. So I think that we could definitely hone in on our observation bucket and do a better job of communicating with those patients rather than expecting them to come in every 9 or 12 months.
Sure. I think those are some really great ideas. I really like the digital approach. I think everybody tends to like the digital approach since we've kind of had this like past 4 or 5 years now of leaning that way. So I have a question because I'm a copywriter. So every day we're working with orthodontic requests that come in, and it seems like 2 or 3 years ago, I was getting a ton of requests for building out marketing materials around kids clubs. I'm not seeing them as much anymore. And I'm wondering if you've kind of recognized that too, or are we leaning away from kids clubs? Should we lean back in?
Oh, I think we absolutely need to lean back in. I think it was easy to kind of get away from those things, especially like you said, 3 years ago when we really had that banner unicorn year in ortho. I think that people had so many, practices had so many patients coming in the door that they definitely let some things slide. But I think kid clubs are a really big thing. I think, I used to see doctors, if an obs patient came in, they were wearing their, Fagalo, Saddle Creek Orthodontics shirt, they got, a wooden coin and they got to cash it in for a prize. I think that was marketing. And so I think, leaning back into some of that could be beneficial. We're certainly not telling people to spend money, but again, just that communication and that effort into that demographic could be really important. I just don't think obs patients are an automatic yes anymore because there's just a lot of different directions that they could go. When I go into a really healthy practice, a lot of times they have, more than one TC, but, they specifically have a recall TC or an obs TC. Because those exams are a little bit different. And just having somebody that can really focus on those patients and that bucket can be really beneficial because we would hope that would be like a 90% conversion. But we've seen that conversion kind of fall a little bit.
And I think a lot of it too is about building community. Creating these, you mentioned Dr. Kyle's Kids Club, and he's got the sloth. They come in and they really enjoy being a part of it, seeing their friends, growing with the orthodontic practice. And so I think that developing that, honing that in, even getting the parents involved too. Like you said, let's make it easy for them, but let's also, make it something that they look forward to their kids enjoying. That can all kind of fall into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they need to see the value in it. Again, just having somebody come back over and over again and say it's not time, it can get very frustrating. And it's like, every time I go there, they just tell me I need to wait. And so, we really need to think about that. I mean, time is so important to consumers right now. They don't want wasted time. And if you can save them an appointment, I think parents really appreciate it.
Sure. And so we know time is important. You also mentioned them not really knowing, what they're getting into. And so I think that kind of speaks to messaging, which I also want to touch on because messaging is going to affect your adult patients, your kids, phase 1s, phase 2s alike. So how do you see that they can clarify messaging across print and online materials?
So specifically for adult patients, I think it's really interesting. When I go to a website, every time I get a new client, I'm checking out their website and their social media pages. I think a lot of people don't promote that they offer adult treatment, from landing on their website, right? So sometimes it's a click, of services offered and all of that. I think it's just as important to market to the adult demographic. And I mean, a perfect example is before and after pictures. So when you go on someone's Facebook and they do a before and after, which I think are great ways to market, I think a lot of people, look at them and think, oh, I don't know, that only had 8 likes. I mean, if I'm looking at, a Facebook page, and let's face it, when I go to someone's website, the first thing I do is find the website that takes me, the link that takes me to the Facebook page, right? Because I want to see what it's all about, and that's where you see it.
Absolutely.
When I'm logging on there and looking, I'm probably not going to like, a picture of a kid's before and after, but that doesn't mean that it didn't make an impression on me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I can see that before and after and really see what the work that you can do and what the transformation that you made in that patient's smile, it's huge. But a lot of times you see those before and afters and it's just kids. They don't do a lot of adults, and maybe the adults don't want to participate. I'm not sure. But I think, if your adults do want to participate in that, I think you should be showcasing the before and after for adult patients just as much. I think that that's a powerful thing to look at online. I know that the fun dances and all of that are fun, but I think people really want to see your clinical results, and that's a great place to showcase them.
Sure. Well, and it all comes back to social proof. I mean, we talk about that all the time when it comes to social media strategy, how important it is to show that real patients in real communities have been affected, and that they appreciate, not only the service, but the results and the community that is built there at the practice. And also, I think that goes back to, there's a lot of orthodontists out there who are kind of hungry for social media ideas. What can you put out there? Add in some adult patients, and that's going to, it's going to do a lot for your social media, but it's also going to kind of normalize this idea for adults who are curious about, getting this treatment, but might not see anyone else out there that's getting it like them. It's going to make them feel like that's normal, make them ready to go ahead and move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when an adult patient lands, especially on your social media pages, and all you have is, adolescent pictures, dances with, kids in the clinic, I think it's important to think, who is looking at these social media pages and really trying to touch in on all demographics. I mean, people scroll, right? We don't have super long attention spans anymore, but I think especially, younger generations, I mean, Gen Z, I think, there's some healthcare data out there showing that even when they're looking for providers with their insurance, that it's pivotal for the doctor to have a picture of themselves, even on the insurance page. They really want to see, who am I going to see? And they want to know about that doctor. So I think a lot of people think that people don't look at your credentials, or people don't really look at, where you went to school and those kind of things. But I think people do. And I always want to kind of see where I'm going to go and, understand who I'm going to see. I know what that doctor looks like before he comes in the room. And if I don't, that's pretty shocking, because obviously the first thing you're going to do when you go somewhere is Google them.
Oh, absolutely. And that kind of takes us to the website. And I think that there's a lot of real estate on the website where you could kind of shift gears and focus more on adult treatment as well. You mentioned that people might not even know that you offer adult treatment. Adding more adult photos into your montage on the website, making it to where just to reflect your social media efforts, making it to reflect more adult patients there as well. And then maybe adding some language earlier on the homepage that speaks to the fact that you offer limited treatment.
Oh, absolutely. I think the landing page should say providing orthodontic treatment to, children and adults. I think, right away, people need to see that. It's really important to always think about your marketing. And I think people kind of got away from some more of the local events and really being a pillar of your community. I think that really hones in. I mean, we see doctors that live in their communities. I mean, Kyle and Anna are a perfect example, right? I mean, they're always involved with everything with their kids. So people, know Kyle is a dad, and that, he's involved, on all those levels. So I think, doctors who live, where they practice, I think, being engaged in community, seeing your referrals face to face, and going to events where you can potentially connect with patients, I think that's important as well. I think people kind of got away from that. But I think we know that works. We know that in the past, those practices have done really well.
Absolutely. We have a whole episode where we talk about ways that you can get more involved in your community. And I think you might want to start small, but you want to get in there no matter what. no matter how much you can invest at the time. You're going to have to put your foot in the door and then kind of expand from there and see what works best. But getting in your community, being a part of it, getting your face out there, helps people feel like you're real, it helps build that trust. And when you're working with kids especially, that's so important. Even when you're working with adults who are in an uncomfortable territory, it matters there as well. So let's kind of talk about, just kind of a final point. When we're looking at 2025, quarter to quarter, month to month, what are you expecting that market to look like? And how can we kind of adapt our marketing strategies to fit?
Oh, that's the $1 million question, Emily. I don't know. We certainly have not got off to the start that I thought we would. You look at what's going on in California, and prayers out to those
Absolutely.
practices and the patients
Absolutely.
that are going through that. You never know what's going to happen, but I do think the first half of the year will probably be flat. I mean, we're not going to see prices, drop overnight. But I do think by the summer, we're going to feel some pent up demand, especially from those families who maybe waited to take, Johnny and Susie to the orthodontist. So I do think the back half will be good. But I think it's really important that practices really hone in on your metrics and understand, how many new patients did we see this month? How many starts did we have this month? And, new patient phone calls. I mean, really understanding your data and diving into it so that you can make those adjustments. I mean, I think I get a lot of phone calls at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, and people are like, oh, it's just been a terrible month. Well, you should have logged into your data probably in the middle of the month and just seen kind of where this was going, because I think sometimes you can make those market shifts of, hey, we're really not getting as many new patient exams, and maybe we need to, do a marketing campaign, or maybe our conversions aren't great and we can work on that. Leanne Panici said years ago, it's one of the things I remember most of everything I've ever heard in this industry is, when you have a new patient exam and they have come to your practice, you're at 50% yes, right? So, really hone in on that. I mean, if somebody has taken time and effort to come to your practice, you only have 50% of the way to go to get them to convert.
Mm-hmm.
So really honing in on that. I think, team reskilling and upskilling is going to be pivotal for this year. I think as we see consumer trends change, that TCs really understand what they're working with and what, trend words, like I said earlier, personalization and customization. I mean, I think TCs need to be saying that is we have a customized treatment just for you, and that not everybody, gets the same thing. So, and I think marketing with those keywords is going to be important, because that's what people are looking for. If you, use technology, make sure that, you're using that in your case presentation, and that you're marketing that you use the most advanced technology. I mean, we know that that's a big investment for healthcare, and that's going to transition into dental. I mean, I think, being able to use interfacing technology with providers is only going to get bigger in the future. So if you have those kind of things in your practice, if you use dental monitoring and you're saving patients time and being more efficient, you need to make sure that you're marketing with that. I mean, that could be one reason a patient picks that practice over another. So really, hone in on what you have and market with that.
All right. Well, Shannon, this has just been such a good conversation. I know that this is going to be invaluable information for our viewers. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on here. Here's your takeaways, everybody, if you're out there listening. We want you to lean more into adult treatments. You want to keep up with your kids' clubs. And you want to clarify your messaging across all marketing materials. If you want to learn more, you can reach out to Shannon. Shannon, can you let us know how we can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can go to our website, Bentson, Copple, Patterson and Associates. You can reach out to me directly, Shannon at bcp-advisors.com. But if you Google us, you'll find us, and you can reach us through our website or give us a call.
And if you want to learn more from us, you can keep up with our next episode. We've also got a blog coming out this month that's going to be covering marketing ideas for the entire year based off of this conversation. So feel free to tune into that. And until next time, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.